and thanks for joining us today for another episode of American Mood Swings. I am Dr. Janice Morrow, and we talk about the brain and all things mental health on this show. So I came across a great program on LinkedIn. Um, I connected with someone named Beth Foraker, and she runs a program at UC Davis called the UC Davis Redwood Seed Scholars Program. And it is like the first 4-year program in the United States where students can live, people with intellectual disabilities can live on campus and have a college experience and come out with certificates and job training. And I just thought I had never seen anything like it. And it's here in California, if you don't know where Davis is. So anyway, let's talk about Beth, what SEED represents, what it stands for, and then talk a little bit how this program is different. While researching for this episode, I saw that there were other programs throughout the country, but I think most of them were 2-year and they weren't live on the campus. So let's talk about what SEED stands for and how it differentiates its than the others.
Sure. I do want to say we are not the first
Oh,
four-year
oh,
inclusive college program in the nation.
okay.
I think that might go to George Mason University. They started way back in 2000, but
Oh, okay.
we're the first four-year inclusive college program in California.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and we started in 2021. So we're behind a little of Virginia, but we're working on it. So the Redwood Seed Scholars Program is an inclusive college program for students with intellectual disabilities. So sometimes that can be confusing for people, but it's people who have essentially an IQ of 70 or lower. So some specific diagnoses that kind of lump into that are people with Down syndrome, people with Fragile X syndrome, people who have Turner syndrome, Lujan syndrome, global intellectual disability. There's fetal alcohol spectrum disorder or traumatic brain injury. And then there's communication disorders and other things, seizure disorders and other things. And so if you think about those people in particular, no one's really thinking about them. And when they're adults, they're really just not working. They don't really have much of an adult life. They're generally socially isolated and stuck in poverty. And so President Obama built federal funding through Congress and the Higher Education Opportunity Act, and in 2010 launched funding for inclusive college programs. And in 2020, UC Davis received $2.1 million to build our program. And our program is 4 years, and there's about 350 inclusive college programs. Most of them, 90%, are only 2 years. And most of them do not have any kind of inclusive living. So more of a community college experience, but maybe on a 4-year campus. So our design of our program is to be 4 years and living on campus. We live for the first 2 years in dorms and then the next 2 years in apartments. And the point of it is really they are not going through the same admissions portal. So they're not getting a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. What they're getting is a credential that we've built that is a holistic credential. So there's certain core skills being developed in independent living, in social inclusion, in employment, and then in academics. And so they get grades in all those areas and they get badges of competency when they reach those skills. And so it's the goal of the program is really that at the end of 4 years, they have the skills to be able to have a job that makes a living wage and to be able to live independently with support. They will always need support, but it could be, minimal if they have these skills in place.
I just love it, and I'm so excited to learn more. let's one of the terms I came across, and one of that you had mentioned in another podcast, for someone who's never heard IEP, like I had never heard what that stands for, and yeah, IEP, how that plays
Yeah,
into.
so an IEP is part of K through 12, or in the case of people who are identified before formal schooling begins, preschool through 12th grade. Um, it's an individualized educational plan. So basically, the school system is saying this student has a disability that needs support, and so we need to plan for what that support looks like. All of that is through preschool. So that can begin at as early as age 3. So that's why Governor Newsom's effort to have transitional kindergarten for every California child who is age 4 is really groundbreaking, because generally, if you're a 3-year-old with Down syndrome, you're in a segregated special education classroom just with other 3-year-olds with disabilities. But if you have all 4-year-olds are now in transitional kindergarten, that means a 4-year-old with Down syndrome could be in an inclusive transitional kindergarten with all their same age peers, all that rich language, and all the behavior modeling of their peers, so that they can be included and then be successful going into kindergarten. So it's fully inclusive preschool, universal preschool is the low-hanging fruit of kind of building real opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities in the preschool through 12th grade level. So then you can stay in the school system if you have an intellectual disability and you're not earning a high school diploma to age 22. And this is transition age is what that's called. And they have transition programs created by the school district. And those are some job skills or some independent living skills that happen within kind of this school setting. And so we are essentially a transition program, but on a college campus with a whole host of life experiences with their same age peers, so that this transition can feel more natural for them, and that they can have all the same experiences as their same age peers and be more fully included in their culture and society, and then build the skills so that they can have employment after graduation, just like their peers.
Wow, beautiful. You just made me think of a commercial. I think I had mentioned it before, but it was a couple of years ago. There was a girl with Down syndrome, and it went viral. I think the commercial was called Assume I Can, and it's got this gal saying, I'm not put in this classes because nobody thinks I can. They don't, nobody offers me a drink, or it had all these different, and it went viral and it was beautiful. Nobody talks to me about sex because they assume I don't want to have sex. It was really well done, and I'm so happy that it went viral and that there is this movement and push, rather than having them over here. I went to high school and junior high a long time ago. It's been 45 years, but I don't remember any people with disabilities in the classroom. There could have been, I just don't remember, but I don't think there was. I think they pretty much went to separate schools and things like that, probably depending on their level. So let's talk
And I
about.
will just say, Janice, that's pretty much the case still. So
Oh,
our program is actually a collaborative effort with UC Davis Health and the Mind Institute and UC Davis, the campus, and continuing and professional education. So all three of those groups are working to support our program. So we have a really great relationship with the med school, and our students with Down syndrome go and speak to first year med school students, and UC Davis's med first year students is about 180 of them. And last year, when we went to speak, only 2 had been in an inclusive educational experience K through 12. And one of them had been a student with my son in Davis. So Davis Joint Unified is a fully inclusive school district.
mm,
But most school districts are not fully inclusive. Most people with intellectual disabilities are still spending the majority of their time outside in segregated classrooms away from their same age peers. And then these med school students, you meet them and they realize they are mad at the lost opportunity because they know they would be better doctors if they had had that lived experience. And they're hungry to listen to the scholars and know more and do better. So we really are hurting our future whatevers, doctors, nurses, teachers, when we don't have K through 12 inclusion and then don't have, college inclusion.
I have to say, I'll just give a little shout out to LinkedIn. Well, that's how I met you and came
Yeah.
across your program. But and I never used LinkedIn before COVID because I was a self-employed chiropractor, never looking for work. And now I've become obsessed. I could stay up till 3 in the morning. I just love LinkedIn because I learn a lot and meet so many people. But one of my favorite things that I've been exposed to are all these disability activists throughout from all around the world who talk about things, everything from just like getting the difficulties, and they'll bring their video camera, getting on public transportation. And there's a guy in Scotland who's always talking about dating and how lonely he is and if it wasn't for these people, these conversations, like, and if you don't know anybody, it's just been very educational. And I'm so glad that there's all these social media platforms, Instagram, where they can educate and help people. I guess they call it ableism because people do things accidentally that are offensive and don't know. If no one ever tells you, getting behind someone, helping them, going to push someone like it. Or there's one gal. I recently, I think she's in England, and she was like at a crosswalk, and somebody was trying to be polite and started to push her, and she, flipped out and, was saying all the reasons why you don't just touch someone's will, but if no, I'm sure he just thought he was being a good guy and trying to
Totally.
be kind, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, get back to the program. Let's talk about the goals and the components, because I know that there's something called foundational classes, and then there were elective classes that are inclusive of like math and budgeting, finance, work behaviors, friend behaviors, sexual health. If you could talk about the difference, the foundational classes, and then all the different elective kind of courses people can take.
Yeah, sure. I echo your joy of LinkedIn. I agree. I learn a lot. I also echo um, the democratization of voices with social media and allowing people who are normally not allowed to speak or have access to a megaphone having a social media presence and really sharing their story. So totally agree with you there. Um, our program has four pillars. We have academics, independent living, social inclusion, and employment. And we have mentors who support our scholars in all those areas. We have over 170 college, undergraduate, or grad student, or PhD. And last year we had a med school student who supported our students in those different areas. So in the academic piece, our students do go to UC Davis classes that are in their area of interest, and they get UC Davis credit, which is really groundbreaking. A lot of these inclusive college programs, you just audit the class. So our students graduate with about 45 UC Davis units. um, we create an academic plan with each professor and each TA and the student to plan for how they will earn credit. In addition to that, we have what we call foundational classes. So these are classes that are just for the scholars, and they really are kind of the on-ramp to being able to be successful in the UC Davis classes. So we have 6 foundational classes for our freshmen, 4 for our sophomores, and then 2 for our juniors and seniors. So the 2 that go for all 4 years are literacy and math. So we do budgeting and personal finance and basic, math that you use in your life all 4 years of the program. And we also do literacy for all 4 years of the program, building comprehension skills, literacy skills, writing skills. So then for the sophomore year, they take sexual health and self-regulation. So they take that for 2 years, freshman and sophomore year. And Sexual health, I mean, people with intellectual disabilities are 7 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than the typical population. They are a vulnerable population and they are often socially isolated. So any little bit of warmth or friendship can be misconstrued into the person wanting something more. So,
Oh,
really learning basic sexual health concepts and understanding consent, understanding red flags and green flags and relationships and what a healthy relationship looks like, communication in a relationship, the difference between a friendship and a relationship, what do friends do? And then our scholars have paid support, and they probably will have paid support their whole life. So, how to manage paid support and manage, people who you might work for you, are they safe for you? And how do you know that? Because that is where abuse can often happen. So we have sexual health, emotional regulation, so learning about our emotions, learning about how we can calm ourselves down, how we can de-stress, how we might notice someone else being dysregulated emotionally, how we can de-escalate that emotional dysregulation, what our behaviors can accelerate for other people and make them not feel great. So, what are we doing? Just building self-awareness around our emotions and having language. Most of our students don't have really any real language around emotions. They just have happy, sad, or scared, right? They're not really thinking, you know, what exactly am I feeling and how am I feeling it? And then how does it feel in my body to have those feelings? What do I do with that? And so really just exploring emotions and managing emotions. So we do that for 2 years. The other two classes that our freshmen have are civics and social justice. So, understanding disability, disability rights, learning how to advocate and self advocate, learning how you can influence policy. All of that is in that first year. And then we have communications and technology. So, really learning how to be safe on the internet, how to proceed and be part of the digital world, but in a safe way.
very that those sexual assault statistics were very shocking to me. I wasn't aware of that. And I love that part of these foundational are learning their rights. I only learned of an organization doing this podcast 2 years ago. It was one of my earlier podcasts, like one of the first three or four. I got Andy he was disability rights, the
Oh,
head
yeah, California. Yeah.
Andy, I can't,
Parad. Yeah.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe he came on. Well, all of you guys, you're so high level, and I just have a few subscribers at this point. So thank you.
Oh,
But
it's cool to get the word out. He's amazing and an
oh,
incredible
I,
advocate. Yeah.
and I learned a lot and what's out there and the programs and how you access them because I think a lot of people like somebody who's never needed to access them, you don't know what kind of support and
Right.
this program is great. Let's talk about on that note before I jump into the next question because you mentioned there's all these mentors and then are they background checked at all like or not really or students I don't know because only because you mentioned that these people can be easily exploited before they're part of your program. Is there any kind of do you do a background check on all these mentors?
We
I,
do. Yeah. We do a background check. They get 10 hours of training that we provide for them. They get a personal interview with me. They And basically, a lot of now it's a lot of word of mouth. So they're friends of people who are mentors currently, or I teach a class about disability studies and neurodiversity and allyship, and so we get mentors through that class too. So they are vetted. They also are mandated reporters, so they have mandated reporter training. Um, yeah. So you ask a great question, and they are.
Well, it makes me think about when we had needed caregivers for my mom. I called, agencies, but there was a few times and things didn't work out. And I'm just a big person who's big on background. People can still slip through the cracks, but because she
Yeah.
was older, and I can only imagine people with cognitive impairment if you're going to leave someone at the home with your family, and it's not Yeah, some people are very trusting. I'd have to say I'm not the most trusting person. And
Yeah,
and I found a detective years ago when I lived on Oahu, and anytime something's important, I call him. It's like a couple $100 and he does a pretty I know people think there's these things on the internet that are like free background checks. They're not that thorough. They're better than nothing, but
right.
it's worth it to me if you're going to have someone in your home. But that's on the side. Let's talk about the employment training, because one of the really cool components is that you do these internships, and then they're not just stuck to one. It's like they have different opportunities. So when does that start, and how does that all go down?
So we have this was, our program is a pretty new program. We're only in year 5 of our program. So we just graduated our first cohort. But as we were building it, we didn't really know, how do we build these jobs? So when we first started, we were like, oh, they're going to have a different job every quarter and it's going to be great. And they're going to try all these different things. But that makes no sense because it takes a really long time to onboard people. We want our students to have paid work. We want them to get better and better at their job. And so we decided to instead create this path of opportunity. So what happens is the first 2 quarters, they learn employment skills with our employment director and their employment mentor. And then they kind of really dive into employment, think about jobs they might be good at, skills that they have, interests that they have. So they can interview people who have jobs that they think are cool. They can shadow people. So in these 2 quarters, they're kind of getting ready for what type of job they would like. Then spring quarter of their first year, we go to the place that they're interested in. So I'm just going to use the example of UC Davis baseball team. So we had a freshman this particular year who said, I love baseball. I know everything about baseball. I play baseball. I want to work for the UC Davis baseball team. So we were like, sounds awesome. Let's go meet with them. So we go and we meet with this group who've never employed anybody with an intellectual disability before. And we say, this is our program. Just for people to know the employment statistics for people with intellectual disabilities, 15% is who's employed.
Oh, wait,
80,
out of
85% are unemployed.
after high school, or
Yes.
just
Yes. Adults
permanently?
right now, permanently, adults in our country, in the
Wow.
best of times, only 15% of people with intellectual disabilities are employed. 15.
That's really sad, because I know that you don't get a lot of money on permanent disability, and unless your family
Right.
was subsidizing your
Yeah.
existence or had a trust, yeah, I don't like that's really sad. So programs like this though can help with that.
And change that. So we go to, so most workplaces have no experience because, like I said, only 15% are employed. So we go to this new workplace like the UC Davis baseball team and we say, we have a student who knows baseball, loves baseball, and is really interested in a job. Do you have a job that you think a person with an intellectual disability might be able to do? So he said, sure, let's try scorekeeping and being in charge of the scoreboard during the games. So we said, amazing, let's do that. So we really try and think through the skills needed for the job. Now, we ask for 3 hours on a Friday for the first spring quarter for 10 weeks. So the person's just going to be going for 3 hours to learn these specific skills for 10 weeks. And then we check back in at the end and we say, how'd you think it went? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And then most of the time they say, we love it. They could totally do those skills. And now I can think of other skills. And then we say, if you love it, are you willing to pay them? They need paid employment. And most of the time they say yes. So that's what happened with baseball. So they said, we love it. It's amazing. He's a great part of the team. He, adds a lot. So we want to pay him. So now this quarter, he's being paid and instead of working just 3 hours, he's going to work 6 hours and he'll learn some new tasks. And so he does have an employment mentor who goes with him. And then we try and build the hours. Now, after his entire sophomore year, if he's been doing well with baseball, then we will say to him, time to try another job. What's another job you would like? He will still stay with baseball if it's going well, and he'll work about 10 hours a week in that job. And then he might say, I think I'd love to work at Trader Joe's. And so we'd say, awesome, let's go talk to Trader Joe's. We go talk to them, we do the same thing. But now he has something on his resume. He's been a worker for almost a year. He's been successful. The person can write a letter of rec, like all of that. And so then generally that second job is easier to get because they have proven themselves as workers. And we know much better, and they know much better their strengths and challenges in the workplace. And so then they get a second job, and we start slowly building the hours. And so then senior year, so then junior year they add in a second job, so they have about 20 hours a week they're working. And then junior year we also ask them to start volunteering at some place that feels important to them
Oh, I
in a
love.
topic or area of interest. So they start also having workplace experience in volunteer areas. And so then senior year, we just start really ramping up their hours. So we might have them try and work, one full day, so 8 full hours. And then, more, depending 12, 15 hours in that job so that they can build their stamina. And then at the end of graduation, we try and really help them go into those jobs. So this past year, our 8 graduates, 6 are staying in Davis.
Oh,
Six
nice.
have apartments here in Davis, and they were able to slide into their job as a paid staff employee and keep that job. And then some of them even have a second job. And some are still volunteering in where they're volunteering. And then we had a person move to San Francisco. So that person is pursuing work there. And then we had one person return home. And so they're pursuing work there. But they really, and what's super cool about it is most people who have intellectual disabilities in their place of employment have employment coaches or mentors with them. Our students, because they've done their jobs for so long and their workplace supervisors have such good relationships with them, they don't need a job coach. They're just in it, doing it, and they are really a very good employee. So it is exciting.
Beautiful. Well, I only learned in researching for this episode with you in this discussion, or maybe it was a while ago. Maybe I saw something. I didn't realize that most states allow people with disabilities to be paid less than minimum wage. Like I mean, volunteering is one thing, but if you're out there, like if I see someone at McDonald's and he's doing the same job, like I think if I maybe you'll know the stats, like I think there's less than 10 or 15 states. I think California changed the laws, but I was not aware. And I thought, how has this, it's like in 2025, how is this even legal that people can be paid less than minimum wage if they're there doing the same job? Like what are the stats on that?
Yeah, so that is a weird loophole from a 1930s law. And it is really outrageous ableism. And so ableism is just open prejudice against people with disabilities, and that is ableism in action. So 34 states currently allow paying people with disabilities less than minimum wage, and by a lot less, like $2 an hour, $3 an hour. It's
Crazy.
still allowed federally. We got rid of that in 2019. So our people who are working, all our people are making minimum wage or more. And then Georgia just got rid of it just a few weeks ago. So, but 34 states still pay people with disabilities below minimum wage. Sub minimum wage is what it's called.
Well, I don't think most people even know this. I didn't, and I've
They
lived
don't.
in
Yeah.
states all my life. But I mean, is Disability Rights California? Are people are there people actively trying to
Yeah.
change it? Like this is out, it is outrageous and it's so unfair. To me, it's unconscionable, especially since when you say, 86 over 80% of them live at the poverty, they don't have jobs, and then they live in poverty, a poverty level existence unless your family is taking care of you.
Right.
Um, let I forget the name of it. Well, I wanted to go into that a little bit, like you because you have the math and budgeting. Now they're getting some job, and you had mentioned before, so many of these people have never had their own money before or handled money. And then you have a card there at UC Davis. I forget what it's called. Let's talk about that and the independence that the earning your own money brings or handling your own money for people.
Yeah, I mean that again, most of our students have not had access to their own money. They generally have not had a debit card or even money that spending money. Most of the time, their families have also, really told them when they're eating, what they're eating, how much they're eating. They are in charge of the grocery shopping, so they really have not had any kind of food freedom. So when you come to a college campus and you have a giant dining commons and you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, that has been a lot of learning for our scholars because they have not had that opportunity to make those decisions themselves. And then I will say one special thing that we didn't even anticipate, and it's been really beautiful. So yeah, your dining commons plan comes with about $200 of Aggie cash per quarter.
Aggie Cash.
And so your Aggie Cash, and your ID card is your swipe for this Aggie Cash, just like it's your swipe into the dining commons. And so we have several markets on campus where students can buy things. Of course, we have a big bookstore and stuff, but markets that have like food, kind of almost like a 7-Eleven-ish. They do have smoothies and some other things. But anyway, right next to the dining commons is this market. And the very first year of our program, our students, we didn't even know about the Aggie Cash. We were so new, and they found out that they could swipe and use this at the market. And they came to me and like, Beth, like we can use this Aggie Cash at the market. We can buy whatever we want. I'm like, that's amazing. So they could not get over the freedom of this. And so then, I mean, it's a 10-week quarter, so it's really only $20 a week. It's not that much money. And of course, they immediately spent it all, right? So immediately that first quarter, it was all used up by week 3 or something. But then, of course, they start getting better and better at knowing how to manage that cash and being proud of themselves if they have any left over. And some of our students, they'd be like, I have 50 bucks and it's week 10. I'd be like, okay, well, now you can have a movie night and invite your friends over and get some snacks.
Oh, I love
So
that.
just learning that has been amazing, right? And then now they get paychecks. And so then learning how, watching their money go into their checking account or debit account and then seeing their spending, they're just learning these skills in real time, just like their same age peers. And it really, builds. And then junior and senior year, they pay their PG&E bill through the apartment. And so they have to talk with their roommates, divide the bill, pay the person. So all of that is preparing them to be able to do that once they graduate. And it's a slow, steady process of learning, but it has been joyful to watch the freedom of having your own money and what you choose to spend it on and how you choose.
About how this is funded and the regional centers and how would because I think there's different sources of funding, and if you're affected by the budget cuts, like do you have enough money for this upcoming year? Let's talk about where you guys get all your money and to run this great program.
Yeah, that's such a good question. So we got $2.1 million from the U.S. Department of Education in 2020 to launch the program. And that sounds like a lot of money, but it's over 5 years. So it's really about $400,000 per year. And so that is the money that administers the program. But, what's the cost of tuition, the cost of living, the cost for a student? So when we got this money and we met with the chancellor and his leadership circle, and I do really want to shout out Chancellor Gary May because he was very supportive of the program and really, has done so much to encourage the success of the program. And he said, this can't just be, he didn't say it this way, but he said basically, whoever is admitted to the program needs to be able to not have a financial burden coming into the program. So this can't just be like a rich kids thing. Like you need to be able to have anybody who's admitted be able to come. So we worked with two big state agencies. So the Department of Rehabilitation is a federal program and a state program, and they fund inclusive employment for people with disabilities, and they try and build employment opportunities. So they were a natural to partner with us because we're so focused on employment. So they pay the tuition for our scholars, they pay for the technology and a new bike. So because we're a biking campus.
Okay.
So, or transportation. So that's worth about $20,000 for every single student, and they pay for that. The regional center system, which is Medicaid money, that's the way California disperses Medicaid. Medicaid is also a federal and state program. So the regional center system is also very interested in employment there, but they're also interested in independent living skills and kind of life opportunities. And so the regional centers were natural to partner with too. So they pay for the room and board for our scholars and they pay for our mentor support. So all of that, that's worth about $20,000 for our um, mentors, I mean, for our scholars on the living side. So basically, we're getting an investment from the state and federal government for this opportunity. And I always say, well, are they doing it because they're so nice? No. They're doing it because the outcomes, like I told you, they're currently terrible for people with disabilities, and they're trying to change the outcomes. So they think by investing in this, this is a chance. So and it really is because 88% of our graduates have paid work. That's literally the opposite of what happens for adults with intellectual disabilities, right? 15% only have paid work. So the program does work, the opportunities are there, and students can be successful. So the investment was worth it. And that's what we just have to keep saying. At this time, we did apply for the 5-year grant again from the U.S. Department of Education, and we're still waiting to hear. So we don't know if we got that money. That is what really helps us administer the program, and so we really do need it. So if we don't get it, we'll have to figure out our next steps. We really are working hard to embed ourselves into the university so we're not doubling costs or doubling, trying to be more efficient. So, but we do need money to administer the program for sure.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the state and federal, I'd love hopefully through this podcast or other venues that somebody out there, private donors, because all it would take,
Yeah.
one person comes to mind, the Kardashians. I'm in LA, so they're
Oh,
not far from here and they're all very, very, very wealthy. But I know one of the daughters, Chloe, was married. She's no longer married to this guy, but I see them a lot on social media and he has her ex-husband's brother has severe disabilities,
oh,
and so
wow.
she's very active. And I'm thinking over here, like all it would take is somebody like that
Absolutely.
with a loved one, because who would be so happy to contribute to these kinds of programs if they're just made aware of them, right? If it comes to if it's out there. I wanted to talk about, well, okay, you mentioned the regional center. So and you're waiting, when will you know about the grant for next year? Or
You
in,
should know pretty soon. I would say within the next few weeks. So we'll
right.
see.
Well,
Crossing.
and then how are people, what do people have to do to apply and and how long in advance are they start should are they starting to, like most people, their junior and senior year in high school, that's when they're starting to think about colleges and apply. How about people who are applying to this program? What are the criteria for them to be able to be admitted, and what is that process like for them?
Yeah, it's very similar in the timing for a typical person applying to college. So our applications open on October 1st, right now, coming up, and they'll close January 2nd, and then the people find out in March, kind of like their same age peers. So the timing is similar. The process is very different. So they're not going through the same admissions portal of a UC Davis student. So they have a different process. They have a whole application that we have. It's much more kind of trying to get to the heart of the person, so what supports do they need? What are their hopes and dreams? Why do they want to come to college? What are the educational experiences and their work experiences? What are their skills and their skill levels in all different areas. So we have a skills survey. We have recommenders from employment and from education where they fill out a skills survey and also fill out um, a form for us. We have an essay, several long form answers. We now this year we're inviting anybody to submit a video if they think that would be a better way
Mhm.
to introduce themselves. And then, so we go through all those documents. They obviously upload their IEP, their any psych evals, any kind of supporting documents. You do have to have a documented intellectual disability, so you have to have that documentation. And then we have a whole team that reviews all the applications. Each application is reviewed by two different people. And then we think who would be a good fit and we offer them an interview and they come in person to campus all day. They shadow a scholar. They go to classes with the scholar. They go to the dining commons with the scholar. They talk to the scholar and they really get a sense of the experience so they know. And then we interview them and we interview their family members and they can interview us, right? And we then from there we make our decision.
Beautiful. Is there is there a plan to roll this program out because of the success that you're having? Have other governments or colleges, well, especially there's several UCs, and if this is the only one, I went to UC San Diego. I'd love to see or learn if there's any more plans to roll this out. And then, because when I talked to Andy Importado from Disability Rights a couple years ago, he mentioned, the big challenge here in California is homelessness. My goodness,
Yes.
especially in LA, the big city areas like where I live. But he said like they bring in that there's a couple states where they've implemented programs, their model. I want to say it was like Utah. There's a couple states where they're having so much, we're not having success here. They're spending billions of dollars. It's unaccounted for, right? There's no, and it doesn't seem to have made a dent where other states. So he was talking about how they bring in these people from other states and like let's try to model what they're doing because they're having success. So now that you guys are having so success with over 80% finding employment, are other UCs, is there discussions about rolling this out or in other states even?
Well, we always say our not so secret plan for world domination is one program like this at every UC and one program like this at every Cal State and one program like this with independent living options at all 118 community colleges. We want this opportunity because we want this to be just the next step for people with intellectual disabilities, just like it is for so many typically developing people. So we want it to be just normalized at the preschool through K-12 level that, hey, this is an option and I'm going to take advantage of it. So my education has to be excellent. I have to be included. I have to build those literacy and math skills. I have to build my social skills so that I can take advantage of this opportunity. So, how do we do that? Well, one really exciting thing is we launched. I didn't launch it. Again, it was the Governor Newsom who launched a $2 million. It's called the California Center for Inclusive College Programs. And so a California Center for Inclusive Colleges, I guess is what it's called, CCIC. And he set aside money in 2024 to launch that California Center. And so now this is really exciting because then we can start collecting data within our program. So we're the only 4-year program, but there's other 2-year programs in our state and other programs with independent living in our state. So we can start collecting data as a state about these programs and the outcomes. We can start sharing best practices. We can start meeting with educators, meeting with policymakers, and really start getting some momentum. And that is our hope and dream. So the CCIC is really a great next step for expansion.
Oh, love it. Well, like, I love it, love it, love it. I'm gonna do everything I can to promote it from in any way I can. I want to hear a little bit. Maybe we have a few, maybe like 10 minutes left. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background and how you ended up down this path. And I think I had heard that you have 4 kids when I was just researching you for this, and that one of your sons, I want to say, went to a school on the East Coast. If you want to talk about that, and I'm so curious, like how that went for him, and is he still on the East Coast, or is he done and living back in Davis with you? And what path, how did you end up going down this path and into this field, Beth?
Yeah. So what happened was I was a teacher. I was a classroom teacher. And then, so I was an elementary teacher and started, so I was a teacher in the late 80s and 90s in the classroom and, had students with disabilities and was trying to learn how to support them. And fully included a student with Down syndrome in fifth grade before Google or before anything. And so to me, the family basically came and said, we would like this person to be included. And I was like, of course, nobody gets to ask that. That's weird. Like, of course, just bring her in. And she was so capable. She was not my lowest performing reader. She was not my lowest performing math student. She was a hard worker. She completed her homework. She was organized. She was, right in the middle of the pack learning. And so really she broke apart my ableism, part of my ableism as an educator. And I could just see her capability. So I had a son so I have 4 kids. Our third child has Down syndrome. So when Patrick was born, because of my experience with Sarah, my student, I knew he could be fully included in the classroom and be successful. And so that's what I wanted for him. And so he was fully included, starting with preschool. He went to the same preschool as his old big sister, and then he just kept going to the same schools his siblings were going to. And every step we were like, we'll provide the opportunity and we'll support him and we'll see what he needs support with. But he learned to read in first grade. He was a good reader and he just kept, growing. Now he wasn't staying on, grade level with his peers, but he was holding his own and making progress every year, which is what you want. And so junior high came and high school came and the same thing. There was a high school here in Davis that's fully inclusive,
Oh,
project-based learning, tech focused. So he was there and he was doing great. He was able to earn a California high school diploma. So when he earned the high school diploma, then once you earn your diploma, your transition services, that time from 18 to 22 really isn't really appropriate for you, or at least people think that. You can still take advantage of it, but his school was basically saying, we don't think these transition services are appropriate for him. We think you should look for college programs. And I had been, connecting with people who were doing college programs. And so meanwhile, I got a job with UC Davis in 2006, helping teachers become teachers in the School of Education and working in their credential master's program. I was not a PhD, but I was a supervisor lecturer. So I'd go watch them teach, give them feedback on their teaching, and then teach a seminar on student teaching. So I'm working at UC Davis doing that. And then I'm seeing these college programs. And so I'm going to UC Davis being like, we should really build an inclusive college program for our future teachers. We'd be so much better. And no researcher really was researching people with intellectual disabilities. And everybody was just like, great idea, but no one really cared. So so then Patrick, it's 2018, he's graduating. And so there's no program really in California that's a 4-year program. So we have to start looking outside of our state. And so he applies to programs and he got accepted to George Mason University, that one that I talked about. And my husband had not been on this journey. So he was like, what? We're sending our kid with Down syndrome to, Virginia? Why would we do that? And I'm like, well, they think he's ready. He did the same thing. Like he went for an all-day interview. So he shadowed the person. He saw what it was like. They accepted him. And so I said, I think we have to like give him a chance, but he's not going to think it's cool unless you think it's cool. So come with us to the orientation. If it doesn't feel good to you, we'll defer, but see what's available. And so he came to campus and he watched the mentors speak, he watched the students speak, he watched the parents speak, and he just cried in the back of the room, crying, crying,
Your
crying. And he
son or
just,
your husband?
my
Your
husband, my
oh,
husband
oh, I bet.
just
I
said,
feel like I'm gonna cry, right?
yeah, I mean, he just said,
Yeah.
how is it possible that this doesn't happen in California? Like, look at what's happening here. And I said, I know. And they think he should come. They accepted him. And he's like, I think he's got to do it. I'm like, I think he does. So we were not sure how he would do. You know, it was all the way across the country. We're a tight-knit family, but he flippin' loved it because he had a community that he'd never really had before, just like our scholars. He had a community and he could navigate campus and he took the metro to DC and he bought his stuff at his, special market. And he just was living this really vibrant social life and independent life. And then 2020 hit. So he was a sophomore in college when COVID came. So he had to come back home
Oh.
and people with Down syndrome are 10 times more likely to have a lethal, deadly outcome with COVID. So we had to
I
be
didn't know
very,
that. I never heard
yes, we had to
that.
be very careful with him through that whole time. He did get up at 6 a.m. and attend his classes on Zoom and had his coffee and did all his stuff and tried his best. And then we just deferred for a year while we were waiting for the vaccine. And then he did start back up and he completed his program. But he, lost a lot of momentum with that delay and all
Everybody
that.
did.
Everybody did.
Every kid out there lost. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't know till a couple years after, even when, like, how many here in LA? I think it was like there were thousands that just vanished. That never
Yes.
came back. They just
Yes.
disappeared. Nobody knew what happened to them. So is he back on the East Coast, or is he
No,
back
he
in the Bay
came back home. He came back home, and like the scholars, he has two paid jobs, which is really cool. He works back at his school as a noon duty supervisor, where he went to elementary school, and then he works as an usher in a musical theater group here because he loves musical theater and looking for a place to volunteer too. But the two paid jobs really are that feels like the right path for people with intellectual disabilities because it kind of is a hedge against a bad economy because you have these two jobs. So if you lose one, you're not so busted. And you have flexibility in your schedule. So if you want to take time off, you can, or if you want to do something. So it just gives you a lot more power as a worker. And so it feels like that's the right path for the scholars. And it's definitely been a good path for Patrick, my son.
I think it's a kind of at this point, especially with AI, just everything. I think it's good to have, if you can, or as you to get new skills, continuous learning. Like I've been a chiropractor for 24 years, but during COVID, I mean, nobody, I had a handful of people, but everyone was afraid they were going to die. And most of my patients didn't come till after the vaccine, which was, well, I think a year later. So, but I had a real estate license and I had always done that very part-time. And real estate was exploding during COVID because of 2 and 3% interest rates. And
Yeah.
that's so I've kind of ended up evolving, doing more of that now, but I'm still both. But I mean, that having that, like, oh, okay, I'll just make my, I'll go into real estate now because no one wants to be touched, or because I don't know if you've ever been to a chiropractor, but it's very hands-on and we're touchy
Yes.
feely.
Yeah.
No, almost nobody was coming in until the vaccine. They were scared, and I understood it. I wasn't too
Yeah.
scared, but most people were. Everybody was afraid they were going to die. So
Oh, totally. Yeah. I
so
think the two paid jobs, you're the demonstration, right? It works. It gives you that flexibility and that adjustment that really makes a difference.
things change. You can pivot, and sometimes
Yes.
some of these industries are completely being. But oh, how exciting! You must be happy he's home. But what a great everybody likes that feeling of going away, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Although my friends out here, they're dreading it when their kids go out of state because they have to pay out of state fees. They're like, oh my, I have a friend from the real estate world and she's entitled, but both her two twin daughters, they're both out of state now. And it's like 40,000 and she
Oh,
took a second job at the Hollywood at night, which is a fun venue. It's our fun, one of our funniest venues in LA, outdoor concerts, but she's
mm,
trying to help her daughters who both wanted that experience of going away. We have
yeah.
lots of colleges here, but everybody wants that experience. So I guess we'll end on that. Thank you. Thank you for doing this again
Oh
for me.
yeah, Janice, I think it's so cool that I'm so grateful that you took the time to learn about our program and really did your research, and thank you for this opportunity. It's incredible. So I really appreciate it.
Well, all right, I'll stay in touch if I'm ever out
Yes,
that
please do.
way.
Yeah, please do.
I will look you up or I'll get in touch. But and thank you and have a great weekend. Okay.